Had a slightly muted intro there, but that's all right because this game was not muted in any way. Leafs win that one 3-2, taking sole possession or holding sole possession of first place in the Atlantic Division, putting some more distance between them and the Florida Panthers, who, by the way, they beat in this game, and maybe giving us a little boost of confidence heading into the last stretch of the regular season here. Welcome to Game Over Toronto. I'm Dominic Jones. With me, as always, I got Lauren. Lauren, welcome back. Let's talk about this game. How are you feeling after this one?
I'm glad that there's more than 2 points between us. 2 goals between the Leafs and the Panthers was almost not enough tonight. I'm glad that there's now 4 points between us and Florida, and an extra 2 points between us and Tampa as well. So, all things considered, I think the Leafs really took it to the Panthers tonight. They played a lot of the Panthers game sort of back to them. Before the broadcast, they were talking all about how the Panthers are one of the best dump and chase teams, how they do X, Y, and Z really well. And all night, except for the faceoff circle, the Leafs really did beat the Panthers at their own game. They were very advantageous. They were in the right areas to make good on the rebounds that they were able to produce. And they managed to hold on and win through 2, even though, they give up a late power play under 4 minutes to go. Yeah, that's usually a killer for them. They pulled Bobrovsky, who was phenomenal all night. The Leafs were very lucky to get 3 past him. He's been unbelievable down the stretch. I think in the last several games, he's something like a 972 or something silly. So yeah, man, I couldn't be happier with tonight's game. Anthony Stolarz, we're going to talk about goaltending in the second period here. Anthony Stolarz playing out of his mind. Yeah. From minute 21 onwards and into the rest of the game.
Yeah, really. I don't know if we should be thanking or cursing the schedule makers for giving us 3 late season matchups against the Florida Panthers, but it does kind of give you a barometer, a testing mark. Because after the last game against the Florida Panthers, I don't think we were feeling very good. And we went into that game feeling like that was the test. That was the, this is where it all comes down to. And then this one, you come away from it feeling much, much better. You have got top spot. You've put some distance between yourselves and them. Now, I will, not to bring the mood down, we thought that about Florida after the last game that they won against us, where they had put in some distance. We thought it was out of reach, and now, lo and behold, how the turntables turn, as Michael Scott would say. Yeah. But we're in a pretty good, feeling pretty good. Also, kind of buried the lead here, as they're saying in the chat. Clinched, baby! The playoffs are secured. Not that it was ever really in doubt for this year, but it's good to have that. Good to have that in the spot.
The X beside the name.
Yes.
The X beside the name, right?
X. It's nice. X marks the spot. Let's touch on. I think we should touch on the goal scorers. I think that's where we need to start.
Yeah, let's start there,
because all 3 of them are 3 guys that need to thrive if this team is going to win. Starting with John Tavares. John Tavares, most goals in the NHL since the Four Nations face-off. Pretty good for a guy who wasn't on any of those teams. What did you think of John's goal and what that tells us about where he's at heading into the playoffs?
I mean, John has always historically, not even just for this team, which he has now played his entire 7-year contract through. He is 6 games away from actually fulfilling that contract obligation because we know that they're not paid for the playoffs.
Right.
And he is somebody that always scores big goals in big moments. He was the person that put the Islanders into the playoffs for the first time in, I think, 30 years when he was there. He did it for the Leafs. He got them into the second round. He was the person that scored the goal. And tonight, the Leafs fall behind early when the Gus Forsling goal goes in at the beginning of the second period. And who else but John Tavares? Right? Yeah. Like, who else is it going to be? Don't get me wrong. I love Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, and, obviously we're going to talk about them in this game and everything, but it's always Johnny leading the charge, always.
Yeah. The Forsling gets that first goal, and the first period had kind of been slightly advantage Leafs. You're thinking it's looking okay. Yeah. And then he gets that goal, and it feels like things deflate a little bit. And and this is maybe a defeatist attitude, but I start thinking about, okay, what are the topics that we're going to talk about when they lose this game? How are we going to handle this? What did they do? How did they fall apart? And it just takes a couple of minutes. Yeah. It just takes a couple of minutes before, like you said, Tavares, he's always the guy. He's the one who steps up. And that is why they paid him the big bucks 7 years ago. It's a shame he hasn't, that hasn't led to more playoff success, but these are the moments that you look for. And this is why he was captain for 5 of those 7 years, because he could step up and show that leadership, not just being a good guy in the room, but on the ice, actually being like, I'm going to go to the net, I'm going to get this one in, and I'm going to make sure that we're in a good spot to take us through to the rest of the game. Somebody that
what a pass from William Nylander to set that up is like ever since the Four Nations face-off, basically at least once a game, he makes a pass. Usually like a floater pass, just like right at like a perfect little bounce pass almost. Just an unbelievable lob, usually through at least one player's legs, to make an unbelievable play like that. And it's like, how good does it feel to have that second line clicking the way that it is going down the stretch here? Like in years past, man, I got the notes. I have the notes from last year about how tough everything was last year for the Leafs in terms of right down the stretch, right? Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It was just
when those two, you need both of the top two lines to be clicking. And I think what this game showed is that when they're kind of unstoppable. But the Tavares Nylander partnership sort of runs hot and cold. There are points when they're really, really unstoppable, like right now, and there have been other points, like you're saying, where it was kind of touch and go, and you're kind of wondering if they needed to be broken up, if you wanted to reunite Marner and Tavares and Matthews and Nylander, and for better or for worse, they've stuck with it, and this is where we've gotten to. One of the other players that I think we've been looking to see step up in a big way in big games gets the go-ahead goal in the second period. Mitch Marner takes the lead. This is, I think, what we were hoping for coming out of the Four Nations, that he would learn how to come up big in the big moments, playing with Crosby, McDavid, McKinnon, all of the sort of the elite players of Team Canada. And you look back at the Four Nations, scores the overtime winner against Sweden, sets up the gold medal winning goal against the U.S. During the Sweden game, I was watching it with my roommate, and I remember saying in overtime, I need Marner to be the one to score so that he can learn how to do this for the Leafs. And then lo and behold, he did. And in this game, Matthews had a couple of chances, and Matthews continues to be a little bit snake bitten. He's not getting the goals that we're used to. But he sets up Mitch, and Mitch fires it home. And it's kind of what we've been waiting for, to see him score in that way, in that moment. And now hopefully he does that in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I mean, if you've gone to a Leafs game while Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews have been on the team together, then you know that at the end of warm-up, they spend a considerable amount of time literally just passing back and forth to each other, doing crazy, silly practice things that when they're doing them, all you can think is you're never, ever going to have that much time and space. And while oftentimes they are guilty of trying to force plays like that where it's not possible, every now and then they are able to make just unbelievable plays. I think that we were all sort of hoping that Mitch would come up big in the Four Nations. Obviously, he sets up the entire gold medal goal essentially, even though it's not the Olympics, but I digressed.
They got gold.
We'll see how he does next February. Yeah, they got a trophy. It's fine. It counts.
It's all real.
Yeah, it's sort of, you're comparing apples to watermelons, but they're both fruit and they both have seeds, and it's fine. But Mitch Marner coming up big in a big moment, and against a team that they know that I think they knew that they needed to beat them tonight, because Zach Payne, the other member of Game Over Toronto, made a very, very nice blue sky message out earlier, talking about the entire list of players that were out for Florida, and how there was really no excuse for the Leafs to lose based on who was out for Florida in this game. And I just brought it up. All right. To once again reiterate how unacceptable it is to lose tonight. This is 3 hours ago. Florida is missing Tkachuk, Ekblad, Barkov, Sturm, and Kulikov. Florida is on the second half of a back-to-back and playing their third in 4 nights. Leafs have had 2 days of rest and are healthy. 0 excuses. And I couldn't agree more. Going into tonight, I'm not going to lie, I was sort of expecting them to... push back and then give up the lead and make it to overtime and clinch with 1 point and then lose to Florida in overtime. If you want my honest opinion, that's what I thought was going to happen.
Yeah.
And so when Mitch is actually able to come up in that moment, put the Leafs up by 1, and then, 5 minutes later, Matthew Knies does it again. Like, boy, when that top line is going, they're so good. Now, obviously, again, part of that is the fact that Sasha Barkov is off. We are all aware of that. But that's the hockey still gets played.
Yeah.
So
the games count. Points count.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. They're not going to look back and say, well, Barkov wasn't in that game, so give us the 2 points back. No, it doesn't work like that.
They're not a real 2 points. They're just kind of a phony 2 points.
They're fake news 2 points. That's what it is.
Yeah. I think everybody's had that sort of feeling going into this game of they need to win. They need to sort of prove that they can beat this Panthers, like at least beat the Panthers, like in theory. Zach makes a good point that there is so many players out. And when they were down by 1 at the start of the second, that is, again, what you're thinking about is this is basically what we saw tonight, the Leafs playoff roster. Maybe you swap in Max Pacioretty, maybe you swap in Nick Robertson, maybe Yanni Hakanpää makes a miraculous recovery and shows up. But really, odds are this is probably what the game 1 roster looks like, no matter who you're playing, be it Ottawa, be it Tampa, be it Florida. And so you're looking at this and you're going, okay, this is the best version of the 2024-2025 Toronto Maple Leafs. This is the peak version of it. And looking across the ice is a very, very good team that is missing several elite players. And if you can't beat this very good team without their elite players, how do you ever imagine beating them with those elite players? So at the very least, they did it without Tkachuk, without Barkov, without all those guys. So promising steps. In their minds, they've beaten this team so that they can use that as motivation. Mitch looked real happy when he scored that goal. That was a big celebration from him. And hopefully, he likes that feeling and he's going to chase that high going into the final stretch of the playoffs. Or the final stretch of the season and then the playoffs. Matthew Knies winds up with the game winner. Breakaway, sort of bounces it off Sergei Bobrovsky's foot and into the back of the net. Great goal. Knies kind of got the first hockey that he played was against the Panthers in the second round all those 2 years ago. And they basically tried to murder him. And so I think it was a little bit of maybe a bit of a revenge moment there to get that breakaway, seal the deal, wind up with it winding up to be the game winning goal. Huge moment for Matthew Knies, who I think we agree is one of the guys that needs to show up if this team is to do anything beyond the first round.
Yeah, I mean, last year in the playoffs, since I have my notes conveniently here, last year in the playoffs, he was pretty good.
He was. I mean,
he wasn't bad. He didn't vanish.
He got the
I find that
Game 5
he's less
overtime winner.
Yes. I remember that. What a beautiful thing. Yeah, Matthew Knies continues to be the most important left winger on the team. And when he is playing well and when the guys are playing well around him, he is so hard to beat, man. And that kid is 21. He is literally legally an adult. But for all intents and purposes, if you're over the age of 30, you understand that you view 21-year-olds as still children. He is quite literally growing into the body that he has been blessed by the gods with. And it just happens to be a body that is built like a tank. And he's fast and he's strong and he has such a good ability to find a small amount of ice right by the net and create the chaos that creates the rebounds, that creates all of the good things. But tonight, it's Mitch Marner with an unbelievable pass from essentially the Leafs goal line all the way up to Matthew Nyes in the neutral zone. Matthew Nyes carries it in, bing, bang, boom, off the post, hits off of Bobrovsky's foot and then into the net. And man, like, imagine you go back to Matthew Nyes 3 years ago and you say, listen, kid, yeah, if we redo this draft, you probably go about 40 spaces higher. He would never have gone in the spot that he went if everybody knew what he would turn into. Because not only is he the player that he's growing into, but he has been given literally a golden goose opportunity. You are going to be on the top line of the Toronto Maple Leafs, an original 6 team, at the age of 21, playing with 2 players, one of which is a homegrown hometown boy that plays on the right wing and basically has the attitude of a golden retriever. And then someone that may, at the end of their career, go down as the greatest American goal scorer in NHL history. Like, it's not impossible that happens. And this kid is 21 years old. I think he's turning 22 this season. And, like, what an unbelievable opportunity. And what an amazing ability to not just absolutely crumble in the shadow of the moment.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of I almost wonder if there was sort of a bit of a method to the madness in bringing him up when they did at the end of the 23 season and basically saying, all right, your first games for the most part are round 1 and round 2 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's sink or swim time, buddy. Like, here it is. This is the level we need you to be at all the time. And, you know, last year there were there's maybe a speed wobble here and there during the season, just as he was getting used to the grind of an 82 game season. But by and large, he's lived up to it, and not just lived up to it. He's surpassed the hype. He's the top. Yeah. He's definitively the top line winger. A top line winger in the NHL, playing alongside, like you're saying, 2 of the best players in Leafs history. You know, a guy who almost scored 70 goals last year, and a guy who's flirts with 100 points every year. Like, these are really, really elite talents, and he's not an anchor. He doesn't feel like the third guy. For as great as the second line, and as great as Tavares and Nylander are, and as much as I love Bobby McMann and some of the guys that they've had there, it does sometimes feel like Tavares, Nylander plus, like whoever else can fit in. And I think McMann does a pretty good job in that role, but he doesn't do the same job that Matthew Nyes did. Pontus Holmberg kind of just sort of lived there for a couple of weeks. He kind of was renting for some reason.
I will never understand why he was there for so long. Like, okay, that's not entirely true, because there was a stretch of time where Bobby McMann was simply not playing well on that line. He was not having success there. They moved him down. He still wasn't having success. And then eventually Pontus Holmberg, it wasn't even that Bobby McMann earned his opportunity back on the second line. It's that Pontus Holmberg shit the bed so hard that they were like, we can't do this anymore.
Gotta put somebody else
And they had to go back.
Yeah.
And they had to go back. And in fairness, since he's gone back into that, he has been the player that
we
Bobby
want him
McMann
to be. Yeah.
has. Yes, that he has shown himself to be. The one that did earn a contract at the age of 28.
Yeah.
In the NHL. Like, that's not nothing. And so I would assume that, or I would hope, I'm not going to assume anything. I'm going to hope that as we go into the playoffs, that Bobby McMann is actually able to sustain that kind of capability, because it's clear that he's able to. Yeah. It's just, sometimes people get into funks. That's part of 100% human thing. Those are actual people, right? Like, we all give them crap about, oh, well, you're a pro athlete and everything, but it's like, man, I can only imagine the things that some players must have to play through that they don't talk about.
Oh,
and maybe maybe that was something that happened, and maybe he's starting to come out of the other side of it, and we can come to expect the things that Bobby McMann we know is capable of.
That's the hope. That's the hope, and you hope that he's not sort of suffering in silence about something. But it seems like he's come through nicely, and he had a couple of good chances tonight. Couple of good chances. Yeah. He got a breakaway, just barely missed. He was put himself in positions to succeed, which is what we need from that player.
Yeah, and Al in the chat, McMahon really brought them together. I totally agree.
1,000%.
He really does tie that line together.
Absolutely. Matthew in the chat says, "Nice future captain of the Leafs in 2032." Maybe.
Oh my God.
I don't know. I
Not
kind of
impossible.
I'm still hoping maybe Matthews will still be playing at that point, but we'll see where we're at.
I would imagine he will be.
Yeah.
Whether he is still on the Leafs is
That is the real
hot
question.
topic.
There's the
It's
real
a hot
question.
topic.
Leafs hold on. They hold on. The Panthers do get one on the power play late, but they hold on, win it 3-2. And as we said off the top, clinch their place in the playoffs. We will move into our second period here. As we do that, I want to remind you, of course, if you enjoy what we do here at Game Over and you want to go the extra mile in supporting the Game Over Network, you can make a financial contribution by going to patreon.com/the Game Over Network. There's lots of fun perks there. I'm sure there'll be lots of good stuff going on during the playoffs. That was the place to be during the Four Nations. So don't miss out on that. Again, patreon.com/the Game Over Network. There's also the crowdfunding site LaRouche for companies based out of Quebec, which can unlock some Quebec government funding. Links are in the description for that. And the GameOverNetwork.com/store to buy some merch to not just support with the money, but also to get the word out there by putting it on your body. So
Absolutely.
check all of that out. All right, second period. Anthony Stolarz got the start tonight. He's been getting the big starts in the big games. Is it, I think, time to anoint him with, 6 games left, 4 games left, 5 games left, somewhere in there? Is it time to anoint him playoff starter, or are we holding back on that just a little bit longer?
I don't know, man. Like so the Leafs play a really good first period. A really, really good first period. It felt like the entire first period that they were literally standing on the cliff, and at any point they were going to just pop off and start putting them in the net, because they were really able to get behind the Panthers and were sort of using their own system against them. And so he didn't really have a challenging first period. The Panthers only get 7 shots in the first period. And in the second period, so the first period ends with the shots 12-7 in favor of the Leafs, which is pretty good. And in the second period, do you know what the shots were at the end of the second period, Dominic?
I can't remember.
24-16.
Oof.
The Leafs allowed 17 shots on goal in the second period.
Oof. Not great.
Woo.
Not what you're looking for.
No, and so, yes, the whole team wins the belt for the first period. Anthony Stolarz should have the belt tonight. Because that second and third period, there was big save after big save after big save after big save. That huge save on the drive by Samoskevich was like, that could change the tide of the game, right? The game is tied at that point in the second period. If the Panthers score there, you think that the Leafs are able to fight back and score 2 more? It's a big ask, man.
Yeah.
And so he does seem to be providing a lot of timely saves. And I gotta tell you, I know that the Leafs did not play well last week against the Sharks. Joseph Woll got absolutely shelled and undressed by the San Jose Sharks.
Yeah. Not a team that you want that to happen to you with.
No. And when was the last time we saw Stolarz get absolutely wrecked?
I struggle to think of it. Like, I genuinely, off the top of my head, you win some games, you lose some games, you have better games here and there, but he's being largely the more solid. He hasn't had those games that are really questionable. Not that Woll has played poorly over the sort of the course of the season, but I think in this moment that we're in right now, again, 6 games out from the start of the playoffs, you want to go with the hot hand, and I think it's pretty clear which one's got the hot hand right now. It's the one that beat the Florida Panthers, not the one that lost to the San Jose Sharks. To put it in sort of stark terms. Who played against the Kings the other night?
Who played against the Kings the other night?
I
think it was Stolarz.
I think so, yeah. And then Woll got the Ducks. I think the writing is on the wall there.
They went against the Kings, man, and the Kings were like, the best team at home this year. I think they had only lost like 12 or 13 games at home so far this season.
Yeah,
some absurd statistic.
Yeah.
There's been more games where Joe Woll has let in, 2 or 3 bad ones than Stolarz, and there has been more games that Stolarz has kind of stood on his head and stolen for the Leafs than Woll. Don't get me wrong, we are literally splitting hairs here. We're arguing about an A+ and an A- goalie. Really, we have better goaltending than I would say. I don't know, 28 teams in the league.
Yeah,
is that fair?
Yeah. It's pretty,
you know,
like as it's having two really, really good goalies. There's not many out there.
Like, imagine like a couple years ago. Could you imagine us being so caught up in between? Well, who's going to start, Samsonov or Mrazek?
Matt Murray's got my vote.
oh God! Right? What? I always forget. Michael Hutchinson. The ghost of Michael Hutchinson. Okay. Like, at no point in recent memory, since I have come to terms with who I am as a person, have the Leafs had the goaltending that they do right now.
Yeah. It's...
so whatever they pick, I'm fine with. I would, if it was me, if I'm the person making the decision, I start Anthony Stolarz. Yeah. I do.
Well, and
even though he technically hasn't played any playoff games, I do. Yeah. Sorry.
Well, and I think the writing is on the wall here. Stolarz started this game. Stolarz started against LA. Woll started against Anaheim and San Jose, two teams that are out of the playoffs, that aren't making the playoffs this year. And Stolarz started against the playoff teams. I think that tells us everything we need to know. And I think we can all be fairly confident going in, that he'll sort of carry things forward. He has basically every situation, every time they've asked him to show up, he has. Going back to the first game of the season, right? Like they lost that game, but they were shut out by the Montreal Canadiens, so they kind of deserved to lose that one. But Stolarz isn't supposed to start the game. That's supposed to be Joe Woll's big welcome to being a starting goalie moment, and he's injured, so in goes Anthony Stolarz. And from that moment on, the debate got started of who do you start in the playoffs, because he forced the issue literally from game one. And I think he has, he's kind of won out. Obviously, a lot can change in the last 6 games. Like you said, you want to ride the hot hand going into the playoffs. So if he gets really cold really fast, maybe you still consider starting Joe Woll. But the other thing I think is worth bearing in mind is all of Joe Woll's playoff performances thus far have come when he's come into a series. He came into after Samsonov got hurt against the Panthers 2 years ago. He came in after Samsonov just hurt all of us with his play against the Bruins last year. So he's done that.
Cold, bro.
Yeah.
That was so cold. That man's career in Toronto is dead and buried, and you're tap dancing on his grave.
I have a soft spot for Sammy. I wanted him to succeed here, but he just it didn't work out. But so if Stolarz goes in and it suddenly becomes clear that the lights are a little too bright and he's not he's not thriving in a playoff atmosphere, then okay, you go to Woll. You've done it before. Yeah. And every time you've done it before, it's worked. I mean, it hasn't worked out in the sense that they've won, but it's worked out in the sense that he hasn't been the problem. The problem has been other things. He's come in and given you a chance to win, like he did last year in the Boston series. I think he won the only game against Florida 2 years ago. Like he has shown that he can step up in those situations. So I think
and obviously, and Zach again in the chat here, regardless of who starts in the playoffs, we should feel confident. It's a great problem to have. And then Luke Venables solely played the Kings and got a .972 save percentage.
There it is.
Come on, man. I think the decision's already been made. I think us talking about it, we're just it makes for a good segment. But I think that like you said, the writing's kind of on the wall.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Oh my goodness.
I'm playoff ready, baby. Let's go. I'm ready to go. I'm razor sharp. Razor sharp.
All right. Well, on that note, let's move into our third period here. We'll, of course, remind you to make sure you're following the Game Over Network at Game Over NHL on Twitter, at Game Over Network on Instagram. We're on Bluesky, on Facebook. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe to Game Over Toronto so you can tune in whenever we go live. And you can subscribe in your favorite podcast apps like Apple Podcasts and Spotify so you can listen after the fact if you cannot tune in live. And check out the other shows. There's lots of good shows.
Yeah, man.
So, like we said, we've talked about this game as being playoff-esque, playoff-like. It seems it's seeming more and more unlikely that Leafs-Panthers isn't the first round matchup that we're getting. Yeah, somebody's trying to take down Lauren's jerseys in the background. Suddenly noticed behind you, like, boy, that jersey is being getting tighter against the wall.
We'll pay the animal tax. This is Potato.
Aw.
He's very sweet. His middle name is actually Jonathan, because we got him the day that John Tavares scored the series-winning goal against Tampa Bay. So
there we go.
If any if any cat is going to make an appearance, it's right that it's him.
Exactly. So we talked about this game as being playoff-like, even though it's maybe unlikely at this point the Leafs played the Panthers in the first round. If that were to somehow work out, if that somehow is the case, or the Leafs gets a similar opponent, I don't know. Would you be interested in 4 to 7 games of what we just saw? That seemed like an entertaining and or stressful and or make everybody bald like me because everybody ripped out their hair situation. How do you feel about 4 to 7 games sort of that? I don't even know what the word is. Just quality and sort of intensity level. How are we feeling about the Leafs' chances?
I'm gonna go ahead and say what everybody's thinking. I think a series against the Panthers or the Lightning would be less stressful than a series against the Canadiens or the Sens, because the Sens haven't been in the playoffs in donkey's years, and the last time that the Leafs played the Canadiens didn't go well.
We all remember, yeah.
I try not to. Stop attacking me. Sorry, my foot's being attacked.
Yeah, I still have enough like childhood nostalgia, childhood memories of the various battles of Ontario from the early 2000s that a Sens series. I'm like, we have to win that. We won them all before. We have to win that. But just sort of looking at the game the Leafs played in this one, like, do you think? What do you think of their strengths going into the playoffs? What do you think of their weaknesses in games of sort of this level of intensity, and similarly the sort of level of intensity we saw against the Kings the other night?
Well, we know that the Leafs can play really well against Tampa, right?
Yes.
They sort of have for the last several years. They have played exceptionally well, which is fabulous. Against the Panthers, it's a little bit more dicey. Now, again, they do win tonight. That's fabulous. But like we said, 5 of their best players are out of the lineup. I think if you play the Panthers, you do have a chance.
Yeah.
Tonight is proof positive that they can hang 3 goals on Bobrovsky. Right? I actually think that while it's a little bit annoying that they have so many division rival games in the last 20 games of the season leading up to the playoffs, but I actually think that it's more of a good thing than a bad thing, if I'm being totally honest, because if you think about it, if something happens and they end up actually facing the Panthers in the first round, this win is fresh in your mind.
Yeah. Right?
It's not like, oh, well, we had a couple wins, but they were back in February and December and October. Right? I think it does make a difference. I really liked the way that the Leafs played tonight. I think that like I said, I think they played a lot of Florida's game against them, and they really were able to take advantage. The last couple of years, and especially last year when Florida obviously won the Stanley Cup, the biggest thing that I saw against the Panthers was that they will play a very dump and chase game, and the moment that you have the puck in the neutral zone and they strip it off of you, they will capitalize on it. They will capitalize on the opportunities that they get. And tonight, that's how the Leafs were playing.
Yeah.
So it seems like they're really able to, at least, now, they play really well against the Kings. Obviously it's a different kind of style of game and everything, but the Kings are like one of the best defensive teams in the league. And they were able to score multiple goals against them. Tonight, they play against Florida, who, they do lose to Montreal last night. So that they're hungry. You know that, yes, they've done travel and everything, but that they're just as out for blood as the Leafs are. And it was really nice to see, the Leafs not fall to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the other thing you hit on there that's a key thing is they hung 3 on Bobrovsky. Like,
Yeah.
that's been a big problem for them in the playoffs in the last couple of years, has been scoring. And
Yep.
it can kind of trace it back to that Panthers series where Bobrovsky suddenly went, hey, I remember that I'm a really good goalie and perhaps one of the best in the world. I should turn that
Yeah.
on against this Toronto team. And they've sort of figured out Vasilevsky. Again, they've played pretty well against Tampa in the last few years. Linus Ullmark in Ottawa, you kind of wonder. Again, that's one of his one playoff game last year was a loss to the Maple Leafs. But Bobrovsky kind of was this sort of big scary monster, representing the Panthers and just how difficult a team they are. And to come into this game, especially one where he started off playing really well, as you mentioned, like the shots in the first period, everything was tilted the Leafs' direction, and the only thing that was keeping the Panthers in it was Bobrovsky to, get in his head, get a couple of goals, and have them all be like really nice goals where they beat him. Like they weren't just garbage goals, like they were proper, good, like incredible pass from Nylander, incredible pass from Matthews, incredible pass from Marner, and then great finishes from Tavares, Marner, and Nyes. And so that's what you need. That's what you need.
Well, and it was a playoff style game all around.
Yeah.
There was 3 penalties called.
Yeah.
There was an obvious high stick that was missed and an obvious trip that was missed.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's clear that the refs are ramping up for the playoffs as well, right? So, the Leafs aren't able to bury a power play goal tonight, but they were, what, 9 in their last 19, I think they said?
Yeah, something like that.
Like
really good.
Silly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really, really good.
Now, again, we know that when it comes to the playoffs, the Leafs have a hard time translating the regular season success to postseason.
Mm-hmm.
You are thrown into
Yeah,
the
that is ultimately their struggle, and we'll see if they can figure that out this year. But again, this is a positive. This, if nothing else, a positive sign, a positive step in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we will quickly move into our overtime period. There's been lots of action in the chat, but if you have any last-minute comments or questions you want to submit for us to discuss before we wind things down for tonight, fire them off in the live chat while we give folks an opportunity to do that. Lauren, tell everybody where they can keep up with you in between shows.
So you can find me on Bluesky at Lauren in the Six. I actually really like Bluesky just in terms of an app. I used to be on a couple of other apps, and I'm not anymore. So if you want to get a hold of me, that's where you got to do it. I do have an Instagram, but it's personal, and there's no hockey stuff on it, so it's probably not worth following. Unless you want to see cat pictures. But I have a cat Instagram for that instead.
There you go. You can follow me at Dominic.
How about you?
Yeah, you can follow me at DominicJ25. I have a Bluesky. I have a other one that we don't mention very much anymore. But I don't post there a whole heck of a lot. Instagram is the place to be, and I'm going to be on the road for the next couple of weeks, or should I say in the skies. I'm traveling for the next couple of weeks, so Instagram might be a fun place to follow there if you're wondering, why the hell isn't Dom on the last couple of game overs heading into the playoffs? And also, if you want to talk some Star Wars, you can check out my Star Wars podcast, the Star Wars Underworld, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, wherever you want to listen to shows. Did your cat unplug something?
Yes, he unplugged my microphone. That was very kind of him.
Incredible.
Bugger. Oh my gosh.
In the chat here, Music for Al says, honorable mention to Max Domi. He was a bit of a prick on the ice, got some of the Panthers angry. He also had a couple of decent scoring chances. He seemed to be the one guy early on in the game who had a couple of opportunities. Domi's a controversial guy. He doesn't always feel like he's living up to the hype or the contract, but he does have a tendency to come alive late. He does have a tendency to come alive in the playoffs. And at points in this game when you're looking for anything positive, there were a few points where he was one of the bright spots. There were a couple of good opportunities for him. They didn't get the bounces. They didn't go his way, but it was a decent look for Max Domi tonight.
Yeah, he had, like you said, he had a couple of unbelievable opportunities. That third line actually looked really good tonight. The more it's playing, the more those guys are all playing together, the more I actually really like what the bottom six is shaping out to be. And Max Domi getting hot when it's important is very important, I think, to the team for sure.
Absolutely.
Luke with a really good question in the chat. Are you glad that JT isn't the captain anymore? Has the lower pressure helped his game? I don't even think I would say it helped. I think that he's been Mr. Consistent, whether he has a C on his chest or an A or nothing.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I know nobody wants to talk about this and we don't really have time to get into it, but I think more than losing the C, it's the contract year. It's the contract year bump, and he's playing extra well because maybe you can get the Leafs to give him 7 instead of 6, or you can give another team to give him 8, or on and on like that.
He's not leaving. I don't know what you're smoking, but he's not leaving.
I really really hope he doesn't. He'll
be back.
Yeah.
Is he gonna go to Buffalo? No, he's not gonna go to Ottawa. Like, get real. He's not gonna all of a sudden move to Winnipeg.
Yeah. We'll end with this one from Matthew. I know Zach posted a question, but Zach, I'll let you answer this question when you do the next show. I'll leave this topic to you to discuss on a future one. So we'll end with this question from Matthew instead. Do you put patches back in when you can? And if you do, who comes out? There's 2 places I think you put Pacioretty. One of 2. Either way, it's the same guy coming out. Holmberg would be the guy to come out. And then it's a matter of, do you just put Max Pacioretty in Holmberg's spot on the 4th line, or do you shift Bobby McMahon down from the 2nd line to the 4th line and put Patches back there with the Tavares and Nylander, which they tried to make happen earlier this year, to some success and some not success. So I think that's kind of the one of 2 places. But I don't know. I don't know if you mess with this. Maybe you keep him as kind of a secret weapon for if somebody goes down.
Yeah, I don't. It's been so long since he played. I don't think is he that much of a game breaker? Like, Don't get me wrong. He produces more offense than Pontus Holberg. Okay, my cat that spent the last 20 minutes attacking my foot produces more offense than Pontus Holberg. But Max Pacioretty, he did play. At the beginning of the season, he did look very good on that 2nd line with John Tavares. It seemed like, wow, maybe they finally found a left winger to fit there.
Yeah.
Since the top line has Matthew Nyes, maybe this is the solution for the 2nd line.
Yeah.
And then ever since he's been hurt, that has not been the case.
Yeah.
He came back. He left again. He has been a shell of himself. I think that you leave him as an extra. If they need him, then they have him. I would even hazard to say, like, if he's healthy, I would rather have him as the option than Nick Robertson.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you'd rather feel
I don't want to see another one of the Leafs like fall over 3 times a game. And Nick Robertson does.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my real opinion.
Exactly. And when it comes to the injured guys, I still like the conspiracy that Yanni Hakanpää is going to play in the playoffs. And, really, would it be that much of a downgrade? I'm Simon Benoit. Come on. Put in.
Oh my God.
Put in.
You're definitely smoking something. Also, Armonia down in the chat. JT Isles return. Let's go.
Oh no.
Do you think that he gets cheered for or booed? We got him.
He'd go from being the most hated person being most hated person on Long Island and loved person in Toronto to being the most hated person in Toronto and loved person on Long Island.
I think that if Lou Lamoriello managed to, get him, which would be a Christmas miracle, let's be honest. Mm-hmm. If they were able to actually do that, like, I don't think Leafs fans would boo him. I really don't think that they would. No. I don't think they would. You're not petty like that.
No, there'd be like a small smattering, but most people would give him his ovation.
Oh yeah, the Islanders are.
And yeah.
I have a mini question before we take off.
Okay.
Because since we mentioned the Islanders, the Islanders are currently sitting far outside of a wild card spot, behind the Senators, Canadiens, Rangers, Blue Jackets, and Red Wings. Is this the offseason where Lou Lamoriello is finally fired from the Island?
Yeah, I mean, he's
what,
one of
what
those...
reason do you have to keep him?
Yeah, well, what reason have you had to keep him to this point? but he's kind of one of those guys where he's sort of an institution. I almost think like instead of firing him, they
Mental institution.
yeah, well, instead of firing him, they make some sort of like joint retirement announcement or something like that between him and the Islanders. Just let him save face because I don't think he I don't think he wants to go. Not that that matters. And we'll just see if the Islanders. But yeah, that's a tough spot to be in if you're an Islanders fan. It's a far cry from all those "we don't need you" chants and the couple of playoff wins.
It turns out you could really use him, actually.
Yeah. I think 30 some odd goals would be pretty good for the Islanders this year.
Pretty good.
Be pretty nice. All right, that is it. That is where we will leave things for tonight. Game Over Toronto will be back on Saturday when the Leafs take on the Columbus Blue Jackets. Should be another fun one. Hope everybody tunes in for that. Yes, very nice flag. And the Leafs are in the playoff spot, so we can maybe breathe a slight sigh of relief, but not too much because they need to be on their game heading into the playoffs. But thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, everybody. And we will see you next time.